Alright man, peace. So as many of you brothers know, I did a video for the Errol Spence versus Shawn Porter welterweight unification bout that arguably is going to go down as the fight of the year for 2019. And I stated that the overall theme of the video was going to be that Errol Spence was proverbial Apollo Creed and Shawn Porter was proverbial Rocky Balboa. And for those of us who've watched the Rocky franchise, especially going into Rocky Part 2, basically the overall plot of the film Rocky 2 is that a good loss is better than a bad win, because Rocky Balboa basically became the bane of the existence of Apollo Creed in the aftermath of their highly competitive initial bout. And as we can see, at least for those of us who pay attention to the boxing media, they're trying to create this same energy around Shawn Porter, especially the ESPN network. But why is that? Is it because they actually care about great fights? No, in reality, those of us who have an understanding know that ESPN is the dispensary for top-ranked promotions, the boxing company that presides over Mr. Terrence Crawford, the exceptional welterweight who seemingly cannot get a big fight. Many people claim that the top fighters in his division are quote-unquote ducking him. But for those of us who understand what professional boxing is, it is a business first and it is entertainment. I've always stated that I have no idea why Terrence Crawford signed back with Top Rank if his goal and his intention was to fight the biggest names in the welterweight division. I guarantee you that had he signed with the PBC, he would have fought at least two of those guys already. But I believe that the reason why Bob Arum was able to lure him back to Top Rank is because he was promised that not only would he become the #1 most marketed fighter on ESPN, but that he would get the exposure that would make him the next Mayweather. I also believe that Terrence Crawford was promised Manny Pacquiao. Pacquiao would be sacrificed to Crawford, and that would allow for the elevation of Crawford's career. And of course, it would make other fights, other big-time fights, easier for them to make in order for Crawford to fulfill his mission and his goal, that being to become the unified welterweight champion, just like he was able to accomplish his goal of becoming the unified junior welterweight champion. Well, there are many plans that are laid by mice and men, but they're not meant to be fulfilled. Why am I saying all this? Once again, Mr. Shawn Porter is basking in the glow of his exceptional loss. As I've stated, he is a truth machine fighter, and this happens a lot, not just in the boxing cinematic world, but also in the real world. About 5 or 6 years ago, Marcos Maidana, another truth machine fighter, was thrust into the national boxing spotlight after he defeated Adrian the Problem Broner at a time where Adrian Broner was being built as the next Floyd Mayweather. He was undefeated. He was running through the weight divisions. A lot of the quote-unquote wokey-woke boxing experts on YouTube were starting to claim that Floyd Mayweather was ducking Adrian Broner, and that the reason why he was trying to be Adrian's friend is because he didn't want to fight him. Well, of course, that created a lot of the great context for the Floyd Mayweather versus Marcos Maidana initial fight, because after Maidana was basically able to demolish Broner in their fight, I believe in late 2013, that created the pretext and the necessity for the Floyd Mayweather Marcos Maidana fight. And the atmosphere around it was Marcos Maidana was able to walk through Little Floyd, or Floyd Jr. Will he be able to do the same thing to Floyd Sr.? Of course, talking about Floyd Mayweather Jr., and we know the answer is no. They're trying to do the same thing right now here on ESPN. Max Kellerman is interviewing Shawn Porter, and he's just going to grace him with so many platitudes and compliments. From what he tells Shawn Porter, you think that he was Mike Tyson, Sonny Liston, all rolled into one. But really what Max Kellerman is trying to do is promote Terrence Crawford indirectly. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
And I'd like to welcome into Max on Boxing Now the great Shawn Porter. Shawn, thanks for joining the show.
Shawn Porter is a great fighter, but why would you use the term great after a loss? Unless you're actually trying to promote something or someone else, Max Kellerman.
The great, huh?
Even Shawn Porter doesn't believe it. Why would you repeat that phrase if you actually already knew that you were great and that you believed it? And Shawn is a great fighter, but I think that even Shawn knows that something is up, that Max Kellerman will call him the great Shawn Porter after a loss.
I think that when all is said and done, you are putting together a Hall of Fame career.
I believe that, and I agree with that. I stated that in my post-fight video. But once again, Max Kellerman, why are you trying to grace this brother with so many niceties? You need to tell him to get a new wardrobe stylist. Because right now he's making Cam Newton look like he can dress.
In the middle of it, how do you feel about that?
Honestly, I'm doing the best I can. I think I've had some really big fights in the past. I think just a few days ago was the biggest fight of my life, probably the biggest fight of this year. I know him and I, Errol Spence and I both, we went out there and went for it all, and came up a little short. My team, I didn't see it that way, but
yes, you did. That was a Freudian slip. You know that you came up a little short. Your team felt like you came up a little short.
That's what the judges decided to do.
Shawn, what I love about the
And you know that you lost too, brother.
fight is when the other guy wants to box, you're brawling. When the other guy wants to brawl, you're boxing. You're actually multi-dimensional, and dimensional. Then afterwards, they always say he was awkward. Awkward is a code word for he's tough to beat.
Well, not quite. I would say that awkward is a code word for he's tough to figure out. It does not always mean that you're tough to beat. Like, for example, there was a fighter by the name of Emmanuel Augustus, who to this day Floyd Mayweather will always state was his toughest fight. And that dude had like 25 losses, man. But he was awkward, meaning he was tough to discern exactly what he was going to do. He would hide his attacks very well. He was very good defensively. Shawn Porter's awkward because he uses a lot of headbutts and elbows and things of that nature. And let me give him credit. He fought a very clean fight against Errol Spence. Errol Spence was actually the fighter who was initiating a lot of the dirt. So Shawn Porter deserves a lot of credit for that. But I believe that with all the trash that Errol Spence spoke about Shawn's alleged dirtiness, or really realistic dirtiness before the fight, it made Shawn much more cognizant of fighting a clean fight because he did not want any excuses from the Spence camp should he be able to defeat him.
But what do you have to do to get over the hump in fights like Thurman, in fights like Kell Brook, in fights like Spence to actually get the nod on the judges' cards?
To be an all-time great championship level fighter, he's just not that. He's a great fighter. He's not a great championship level fighter. There's nothing against the brother. That's why I put him in that same mold of a Kenny Norton. Great fighter. He's going to mollywop 95% of the division, if not 98% of the division. But those 1, 2, maybe 3 guys in your weight class, if they're legendary level fighters or high level championship fighters, they're going to defeat Shawn Porter because they have just a little bit more naturally of what he doesn't have, whether it be height, reach, or what have you. Things that you just can't compensate for in practice or in sparring if you don't have one punch knockout power, which he doesn't have.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad that you recognize that. That's actually a rule that I followed in boxing for a long time. You outbox the brawler and you outpunch the boxer, and so that.
No disrespect, brother, but how many great fighters have you actually outboxed? You've been in the ring with top-level competition. I agree with that. You've lost to all of them other than Danny Garcia, and that fight came down to the last round, to the very last round.
Collectively, what we've been able to do is over my career as an amateur and a pro, we've tailored my style to fit whoever I'm boxing against. So with this fight the other night, it was definitely about boxing him from the outside as well as beating him in on the inside.
Nonsense. You were not trying to box him from the outside. You were trying to attack him. That was the only way that you were going to be able to defeat him. He did a very good job of getting on the inside, but part of that was because Errol Spence himself was so aggressive. He was there for you to attack him. And he did a relatively good job, even though I thought that a lot of the attacks that you're getting credit for by many of the Terrence Crawford superfans on the internet did not really land. You did a great job nonetheless, though. So,
I really don't know at this point what it would take for me to get a decision over a guy like Errol Spence or a decision over, Keith Thurman in the past, also Kell Brook in the past.
Be a better fighter. Be happy that you got the decision over Ugas, because many people do not think that you deserved it.
The one thing that we try to do, that I try to do at least when I go out there and box, is I try to be spotless. I try to be perfect. And it's hard to be perfect in everyone's eyes because, again, each judge has his own perspective and his own opinion.
Well, brother, to be very honest with you, I'm not quite sure if you're ever going to be able to succeed in that quest of being perfect because you don't have a perfect skill set. Floyd Mayweather had a perfect skill set. And I'm pretty sure that even he would tell you that he never had a perfect performance. He had performances that were close, like against Gotti or Diego Corrales, or some may even say Canelo. But Floyd had nonpareil footwork, body mechanics, coordination, reflexes, head movement. You have none of those things. You're very awkward. You're about as great as a former football player can become as a boxer. That's about as much credit as I'll give you. Kenny Norton also, by the way, was a former football player, also was in the Marines, who became a great boxer, but he also was very awkward. His movements were very awkward. Very difficult to discern when he was going to punch and how he was going to defend. And that's why he gave Ali so much trouble. Also because Ali was very non-conventional in how he executed many of his attacks. Kenny Norton basically had the same body dimensions as Ali. So Kenny Norton's trainer, Eddie Futch, told Kenny, whenever Ali jabs, you jab because you have the same reach. That's how you're going to nullify his jab. And once you nullify Ali's jab, which was his number one weapon by far, that really threw him out of sorts. Unfortunately for Shawn Porter, he can't do that because his arms are too short to defeat many of the top level fighters in the welterweight division.
Of what he's seeing in the ring, you know. So for me, it's a matter of me going out there and doing what you saw me do the other night. Leave my heart in the ring and pour it all out and empty the tank. And you know, I don't want the case to be left into the judge's hands. And we were going out there, we were going for the knockout, and you know, we didn't get that. And the worst happened.
Shawn, from listening to what you're saying, like how
Errol better work on his head movement, and most importantly, he better work on his diligence. Because I like to follow many of these fighters on some of their social media platforms, because that's how you get an understanding of how successful they're going to be in the future. What are their habits outside of the ring? I follow Terrence Crawford. I see many of his habits outside of the ring. For the most part, Terrence is playing darts or playing pool or bowling with his homeboys, or he's out fishing with his sons, or attending their wrestling tournaments, so on and so forth. Errol Spence, whenever I see an update from him on his social media, he's eating shellfish and he's drinking. Major problem for him. Because I don't care how hard you train for those 9 weeks or 10 weeks, that's not going to make up for all the toxins that you put into your body in between fights. He has very bad habits outside of the ring, and they're going to affect him once he gets into the ring with someone on the level of a Terrence Crawford, if he does not reel a lot of those issues back.
Maybe, are you just going to Shawn Porter harder? Like, in other words, if you're a tough out for anybody, and you showed that.
Yeah.
I thought Spence won because I had it 6-6 at the end, and he got the knockdown.
Yeah, just like his dad and his assistant trainer, Barry Hunter. And probably so did he when he scored the fight.
Thought you built an early lead. He's long, he's rangy, he hits him.
Early lead. Through 6 rounds, Errol Spence was up 4 rounds to 2. Knock it off.
His quick hands, he was a huge favorite going in.
He shouldn't have been. He should not have been a huge favorite. But it was very obvious to me how the fight was going to go. Once again, Shawn does not have the one-punch knockout power to knock out Errol. So unless he would have been able to hit him with a very damaging blow to the rib cage that would have debilitated him for the remainder of the fight, and that blow would have had to have come very early in the fight, circa round 2 or 3, where maybe he could wear Errol down over the course of the remainder of the fight, he was not going to beat him, because he can't knock him down or knock him out with one blow. Errol is the person who had the one-punch knockdown or knockout power.
Fought a great fight of the year type candidate. There's a reason I wanted to talk to the so-called loser of that fight.
Because your job is to promote Terrence Crawford. So of course you're going to exalt the fighter who gave quote-unquote Errol Spence a tough time. Because the issues with the negotiations, or the potential negotiation issues with the Terrence Crawford camp, aka Top Rank, and the Errol Spence camp, they have to be laid out right now. So Max Kellerman's job is to exalt any fighter who gives Errol Spence a tough time in the ring, so that he can try to give some points over to the Terrence Crawford side of the table when the negotiations come.
Rather than the winner today, because the inspiration.
Look at him stuttering like a bitch. Errol Spence fought just as hard and just as tough as Shawn Porter, but you're here trying to concoct some fabricated reason why you have the quote-unquote loser. And really none of these brothers are losers. They're winners at life because they work hard and they're actionizing their gifts, so that's a great thing. But why would you have the person who did not get the decision on your show, unless you're trying to parlay that into some negotiation points for Terrence Crawford, who we know is the top fighter on your network, Max Kellerman, that being ESPN.
And that fight came from you. As a fight fan, I was inspired by you in that fight, though I thought Spence won by a point. How do you then get the win? I want to go back to that question, because you say, I try to do this, I try to do that. It already looks like you're fighting as hard and as well as you can. What is going to be the...
He fought as hard and as well as he could, with Errol Spence dumbing down his fight style to once again try to defeat a top-level fighter using their fighting style against him. And that's something that he might want to reconsider for future bouts. He might want to go the opposite route, the route that you claim Shawn Porter takes in many of his fights against top-level competition, where he tries to out-brawl the boxer and outbox the brawler and so on and so forth, and maybe just intermingle various styles in his performances. Because if he consistently tries to outdo fighters in what they do well, eventually he's going to get clipped, especially when he rises in the level of competition. He's already at a very high level in the fighters that he's going against, but the elite level fighters in the division, the fighters who have a lot of tricks in their bag, aka Pacquiao and Crawford, they're going to bring a lot more to the table when it comes to tricks, and you don't want to play too many games with them.
That you can do to separate you in those kind of Keith Thurman, Kell Brook type fights?
You know,
you don't know, because your boxing IQ is not that high. It's okay, brother. You're still a Hall of Fame fighter. There was a commenter, I believe in the post-fight video that I did, that tried to disagree with me when I stated that Shawn Porter is a Hall of Fame fighter. He said, what are you talking about? You're contradicting yourself. You just said that he never beat anybody who was great. That's not true. Shawn Porter is a great fighter. He's beaten great fighters. He's just not an elite championship level fighter, meaning what? He's not going to defeat other fighters who have belts or multiple belts. In most of these unification matches, he's going to lose. Now, if he goes up against another top level fighter, say for a vacant title, something along those lines, yeah, he can win, because he's just going to outdog you. He's going to outwork you. He's a great natural athlete. He's just not gifted in certain important areas that oftentimes are the distinction between great elite level champions and great fighters. There's just not much else that he can do. He's not going to defeat an Errol Spence unless once again he gets lucky and breaks a couple of Errol's ribs early in the fight. That's his only hope. Once again, if Errol fights the fight that he should fight against Shawn, the next fight is going to be even easier.
You got me stumped, Max. I really don't know the answer to that. I think
that means you're going to lose again.
You answered the question yourself when you said go out there and Shawn Porter more. I think that's been going.
Let me also say this. I really hope that this brother goes the Timothy Bradley route and retires early, because he takes a lot of damage. He's what you call a quote-unquote fan-friendly fighter. But those are the guys who end up like Jerry Quarry 15 years from now, drinking their steak through a damn straw. It's not worth it. This cat has a family. He's taken a lot of damage in his career. He's had a lot of very physical fights. Even against Broner, he took a little bit of damage, especially later on in that fight. Broner hits very hard. Ugas, Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, Errol Spence, Kell Brook. These are some damaging fights. So hopefully the brother hangs him up very early. He'll be a great commentator. He should speak to Timothy Bradley about a lot of the rehab processes that he undertook, especially in the aftermath of the Provodnikov fight, when it was very clear that he was starting to slur his words in a pronounced fashion.
Go harder, you know, and here's the thing, you know, going into that fight, I was the underdog. I was the shorter guy. I was the smaller guy. I was the guy that was going to get knocked out. I was the guy that wasn't as fast or as good a boxer, as good a puncher, the whole nine.
And all that played out other than the knockout. And I did not predict the knockout. I didn't see Shawn Porter get knocked out. He's too strong, too much heart, too good a chin.
And I showed all of that to be incorrect. I showed that I could do all of those things that everyone said I couldn't do.
Right, but brother, you lost. And your own team knows that you lost. So let's not take too much stock in a close loss.
He hit you with a shot that would have knocked out 99% of welterweights who ever lived. Your knees buckle. I don't even know, did your glove hit the canvas? Because if it did, it was only for a second.
Obviously, it hit the canvas because he accepted the knockdown, you idiot. You're selling Shawn Porter really hard, Max Kellerman, and you're trying to fool people, but you can't fool me. I understand what you're doing. Those of us who pay attention right now know that right now, Terrence Crawford has his back against the wall. His promotional company is having trouble getting fights for him. He's in the worst position that you can be in. He's a great fighter who's not that marketable and is not going to guarantee that high of a purse. So who is he going to fight? That's why I ask a lot of the Terrence Crawford superfans, who is Terrence going to fight next? Please tell me somebody, a name, anywhere. His last fight was against Amir Khan. This notion that all of the fighters at the PBC and these other top welterweights are ducking him, that's a smokescreen for the fact that Top Rank has no idea what to do with this fighter. Even Oscar De La Hoya came out and said the same thing. I feel sorry for Terrence Crawford. He might not even get to the Hall of Fame because he can't get a fight. I would listen like, Oscar, for once. For once, your spoon up your ass having self is correct, man.
Then you start shouting for him to bring on the fight. What's going through your mind in that moment?
I'm trying to watch my mouth. I was mad, to say the least. And I knew Jack Reese was going to come in and start counting. I didn't want that to happen. And when I saw that happen, I just, I'm already filled up. And, the fire just inflamed even more. And I said, let's go. And, when we came back together, I did the best I could to, try to even that round out. I knew it was going to be a 10-8 round. And I did the best I could to, try to even that round out. And then, going back to the corner, the mindset was just finishing this fight and doing whatever I could to at least make it a draw. At that point, I felt like I was winning the fight. I felt that if the...
Stop lying, brother. You didn't feel you was winning the fight. Just stop.
Going the other way, I thought that that knockdown would have solidified the draw at that point. And so that I knew whoever won the last round was going to win the fight. And, so I went out there and I just tried to give him my all.
I would love to see a rematch with you and Errol Spence. I would love to see a rematch with you and Keith Thurman.
Max Kellerman, why are you trying to promote PBC fighters? Shouldn't you be saying that you would love to see Terrence Crawford fight somebody? Let's be for real now. Once again, Max Kellerman is an employee with ESPN, and they already know the condition of Terrence Crawford's career right now. He's in very dire straits.
See you and Terrence Crawford, but that...
It's about time that you said that.
Do you become a litmus test to measure the other best fighters in the division against, right? My thought after that fight was, let's see how Terrence Crawford does with Shawn Porter. And you're the one guy in the PBC who has never been shy about saying, I'm not hiding behind anything. Terrence Crawford, give him shine when they're leaving him off crack.
Well, what's interesting, in the aftermath video that I did for the Errol Spence versus Shawn Porter bout, I stated that Shawn Porter versus Terrence Crawford would be the fight to make. I had a lot of brothers hit me up in my comment section saying, I'm not sure if you heard about this, bro, but supposedly Terrence Crawford and Shawn Porter state that they do not want to fight one another because they grew up in the amateur boxing program and they're good friends. I said to myself, wow, imagine if this was the case with Errol Spence, if he said, I don't want to fight Terrence Crawford because we grew up together in the amateur boxing program. What kind of bullshit is this? That's a perfect fight for the both of them because they both claim to be getting avoided by other top names. Terrence Crawford has a belt. Shawn Porter needs to get a belt back in order to validate why other fighters will want to fight him. But as Max Kellerman has just stated here, Shawn Porter is basically going to become the litmus test for the top fighters in the welterweight division. He's a truth machine fighter. You have to get past him in order to be considered an elite level champion because he's already a championship level fighter. If you can defeat him, you become considered an elite level champion.
Like that. So the danger for you is, in fact, Porter makes great fights. Let's measure Terrence Crawford against Errol Spence by how he does against Shawn Porter. Are you saying, I don't know, there's no way for me to change that narrative? I'm just going to go and do the best I can and let the chips fall?
I tell you what, I don't want that to be the narrative. I don't want that to be, at the end of the day, you know, me being a quote-unquote a measuring stick for someone else to say, well, you know, he fought this guy this way, he fought that guy that way.
Absolutely. Make you the modern-day Shane Mosley. Remember about 6-7 years ago, Shane Mosley was the guy that they would ask, who hit harder, Canelo or Pacquiao or Mayweather? Basically, who whooped your ass worse, Shane?
Matchup. I don't want that to be the case. I think at this point now, demand a rematch. I want a rematch with Errol Spence. It's not about correcting something. It's not about having a second go at it or anything like that at all.
Yes, it is, brother. Stop lying. Right now, you're trying to strike while the iron is hot. I understand that. But you're still not going to be the A side because you lost.
This fight being a close fight, it was entertaining. The world watched it. The world loved it. We can both make money doing this. This is what we signed up for.
That's very true, but Errol Spence is going to make money regardless. And if they make the Danny Garcia fight, we already know how it's going to get sold. They're going to appeal to the Puerto Rican fan base. Of course, Angel Garcia is going to start running his mouth. Danny Garcia is a name that Errol Spence should want on his resume before his career is over. Because Danny Garcia is the type of fighter that if Errol Spence does not fight him, Danny can go and win another belt at 147 once Errol moves up to 154. Or Danny himself can move up to 154 and get a belt, who knows. And then 15 years down the line, people are going to say, Errol Spence, how come you never fought Danny Garcia? He's already defeated Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter's not going anywhere. Errol can make the fight with Danny, beat him in early February, and come back and fight Shawn Porter in a rematch in late May if they can't make the Terrence Crawford fight or if they can't make the Manny Pacquiao fight. Manny Pacquiao, I believe, is going to fight Mikey Garcia. That's going to be an interesting fight, and they match up well because they have very similar dimensions. They're both about 5'5.5", 5'6", short arms, punch hard, so on and so forth. That will be a very exciting fight. So I believe that that's the fight that the PBC is going to make for Manny Pacquiao. I believe that that's the fight that he wants. And I don't blame Manny because you just can't throw Manny in the ring against these young, big welterweights back-to-back. So they're probably going to match him against Mikey Garcia. They're going to match Errol Spence most likely against Danny Garcia or a rematch against Shawn, but I think it's going to be Danny. And, of course, that's going to leave Shawn Porter out of the loop. That's why I state, once again, why don't you just make the fight with Terrence Crawford?
Again, and give me a shot at doing what I do best, which is
fight a very rough fight and catch a L.
Do well, Errol Spence, and let's do it again.
I am a huge fan of yours. You make boxing, you're part of what's right about boxing. Real fight fans love you. If you don't already know that, you should know that. You fight, not only are you gaining experience and you fight with intelligence, and the awkward stuff is kind of a lot of way for other fighters to say, a certain way for other fighters to say he's hard to beat.
He is very hard to beat. Everybody who's watched Shawn Porter knows that he's a very difficult cat to defeat. But awkward to me does not mean that he's difficult to beat. It just means that his maneuvers are very strange.
Never cheat the fans, always produce action, always show up in shape, and have the heart of a champion. My hat's off to you, and I want to thank you for joining me today on the show.
You got it. Listen, let me just say this. There is only one Showtime Shawn Porter, but there's a lot more guys coming up just like me that are willing to give their heart and everything they got to the sport. So it's not just me. And thank you so much for your time, Max, and we'll talk again soon after the rematch.
Thanks, champ.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. We'll see if Shawn Porter is able to succeed in his quest of getting a rematch against Errol the Truth Spence. I doubt if that will be the case. I think that Errol is going to flirt with the Shawn Porter rematch as well as a possible bout against J. Rock Williams at 154, which, you know, that could happen as well. Who the hell knows? Errol Spence has stated that he wants to base his career off of what Sugar Leonard did. Sugar Leonard would vacillate in between 147 and 154. I believe he beat Kaluli at 154 in the middle of his 147-pound reign. So Errol Spence might consider doing that. Of course, the great Floyd Mayweather also did that as well, going up to 154, taking a prominent fighter's belt and then coming back down to 147. We'll see. If I was on Errol Spence's team, I would tell him either make the Manny Pacquiao fight if you can make that fight, or fight Danny Garcia next, because that's a great name on your resume. Defeating Shawn Porter again is not going to do anything for you, because the only thing Errol's going to do in a rematch against Shawn is fight a smarter style. And the Terrence Crawford super fans who are trying to concoct and propagate this notion that Terrence Crawford is being avoided by all these other top welters, they're going to claim, well, you know, he just ran from Shawn Porter for 12 rounds because he was scared, blah, blah, blah. So you have to do what's best for your career. Danny Garcia is going to make you the same money as a Shawn Porter rematch, and really it's not going to add anything to you to defeat Shawn Porter again. Make the Manny Pacquiao fight or make the Danny Garcia fight. J-Rock is always going to be there, even though that would be a great fight as well, just to see how Errol looks at 154. When it comes to Shawn Porter, he and his team should be trying to make the Terrence Crawford fight. I don't want to hear no bullshit about how they came up through the amateur program together. That's nonsense. So peace.